looking the other way, goes central, Rafinha, hat-trick!
Barcelona recovering the ball, and here is... Oh my word, what a ball from Koundé, and what a finish from Rafinha! Can he equalise the youngster? He can indeed! My word! Well, the lad is a bit special, isn't he?
They conquered Spain. Laliga dominated. Copa del Rey secured. Supercopa dismantled their rivals. But deep down there was a wound called the Champions League, a trophy they were ready for, hungry for. But in the moment of truth, they collapsed. And that's why they've created a trio that can cause fear in anyone in the league and in Europe. But how good is this trio, and what can they win? Well, let's talk about it. Last season, Barcelona were brilliant. They played with purpose, control, and hunger. In La Liga, they didn't just win it, they owned it. Week in and week out, they looked like a team with one goal: domination, and they achieved it. The Copa del Rey? Same story. They rotated, they trusted their youth, and they still managed to lift the trophy. In the Supercopa, they outclassed everyone. They were tactically sharp, physically intense, and mentally locked in. But all of that wasn't the target. That wasn't the mission. The real mission was the Champions League. That was the one they had circled. After years of early exits, humiliations and rebuilds, this squad finally looked ready. The group stage went well. The round of 16 and quarterfinal, they passed every test. But when they reached the semi-finals, that's where things fell apart. Not because they were outclassed, not because they were tactically naive. No, it all came down to one thing: fatigue. The front line, Rafinha, Yamal, Lewandowski, was completely drained. They had carried the team all season. No rotations, no rest, just constant pressure. And in a competition like the Champions League, where the margins are razor thin, tired legs are enough to cost you everything. That's exactly what happened. And this is where Hansi Flick decided, never again. That semi-final against Inter Milan wasn't just a match, it was a test of endurance, and unfortunately, Barca didn't have enough left in the tank. The first leg in Spain. Barcelona stayed sharp. The game was intense, but after the 75th minute it was clear who would win. The leg started slowing down, the pressing wasn't as coordinated, the decision-making in the final third, sloppy. Still, they managed to claw their way back into the game. That comeback late in the second half was impressive. It showed character, but Inter's equaliser also showed cracks. The players were forcing themselves forward on fumes. Then came the second leg at Milan. They went down 2-0 again, and again they pulled off another comeback. 3 goals, relentless effort. Rafinha scored deep into the 80th minute. The crowd was behind them, the energy was wild, they gave everything to turn that game around. But because they were tired and they switched off for a second, Inter scored and took the game to extra time. But then came extra time, and that's where it all crumbled. You could see it in the body language. Yamal wasn't making the same bursts. Rafinha wasn't tracking back with the same urgency. Lewandowski was isolated. They had just pulled off a comeback, but the price was clear. Every attacker was spent. And here's the brutal part. Hansi Flick turned to the bench, and there was no one with the quality or readiness to step in and keep the tempo up. He couldn't risk throwing in a B-team option on the wings when the stakes were this high, so they stuck with what they had, and Inter punished them. They exposed that fatigue, stretched the pitch, and took control. Barca were knocked out, not because they weren't good enough, but because they were overused and undermanned. Flick learned from that, and this summer he's making sure that it doesn't happen again. And he is starting from the left wing. You see, coming into the new season, a lot of people assumed that Rafinha would continue on the left. He had a good thing going last season, drifting into that space, and it worked well under Flick. But once the Nico Williams deal started gaining momentum, the picture shifted completely. And when you look at Nico's profile, you understand why. This guy is different. He's not just fast, he's smart with it. He doesn't just beat defenders, he manipulates them. The way he controls the tempo of a 1v1, the way he uses hesitation and body feints to create that yard of space, he's special. He's got that kind of unpredictability you can't teach. And let's be clear, his stats won't blow you away. He's not the guy dropping 20 goals or 15 assists a season just yet, but when you watch him play, the influence he has is massive. He stretches defenses, he isolates fullbacks, he creates those small chaotic moments where gaps appear. And that's where players like Lewandowski, Yamal and Rafinha thrive. What makes this move even smarter is how well Nico fits into Hansi Flick's system. Flick doesn't need his wingers to just cross and run, he needs them to press, to transition, to keep width high when necessary, but also collapse inside when the ball is central. Nico can do all of that. He has the engine for it. He tracks back when needed, he presses intelligently, he has that Bayern DNA Flick is used to working with. In fact, you could argue that Flick sees Nico as his version of Serge Gnabry. Someone who might not get the spotlight every time, but who breaks games open with pure explosiveness. Someone who's relentless in transition and direct in possession. And someone who, when you need a burst of pace or a spark on the counter, is already 10 steps ahead of his marker. And here's what this means for Barcelona. Nico gives them balance. For the first time in a while, they have a natural left winger who is built to play that role week in and week out. He's not just filling in, he owns the position. He allows the others to do what they're best at without forcing anyone out of position. So now, the left wing is locked, it's secured, it's dangerous. But that brings up an important question. What happens to Rafinha? Most people think Nico's arrival pushes him out, but Flick's plan goes deeper than that. But before we continue this video, please hit the subscribe button. Thank you. Let's be real, no one saw Rafinha leaving. Not the fans, not the analysts, not even his critics. After the season he just had, there was no reason to think his spot would be in danger. He was arguably the most consistent attacking player last season. And the numbers back it up. 34 goals, 25 assists. That's not a winger padding stats against small teams, that's a player who showed up every time it mattered. Big games, knockout rounds, second halves when things got tight. Rafinha delivered. But what made it even more impressive was how he did it, because while the stat sheet might say left winger, the tactics told a different story. Hansi Flick gradually pulled Rafinha out of that wide role and gave him more responsibility. He wasn't just sticking to the line and whipping in crosses anymore, he was drifting inside, picking up central spaces, supporting Lewandowski as a second striker, and even acting like a creative 10 in tight games. He adapted completely, and that's exactly why he won't be on the bench. In fact, he's more essential than ever. With Nico Williams locking down the left flank and giving Flick that direct wide option, Rafinha now has the freedom to evolve even further. Flick has seen what he can do, not just as a winger, but as a multifunctional threat. He can play as a 10 behind the striker, especially in games where the opponent sits deep. He can also play as the striker when Lewandowski is out, offering something different, more mobility, more link-up, more pressing. He may not look like a natural number 9, but his movement is sharp, his finishing is clean, and he's got that instinct to find space in the box. He's got just enough of a striker's instinct to make it work when needed. That's what makes this trio so dangerous. Rafinha isn't competing for his spot, he's redefining it. He's gone from winger to hybrid creator to complete forward. So no, he's not stepping aside. And no, Nico Williams isn't replacing him. They're playing together, complementing each other, elevating the system. But if we're talking about elevation, we've got to talk about the youngest of them all. If there's one player who doesn't need much introduction anymore, it's Lamine Yamal. He's 18 and already playing like a seasoned professional. Not a flash in the pan, not a youth prospect getting cameos. He was carrying Barcelona at times last season, and that's not an exaggeration. 18 goals, 25 assists. At 18, those are numbers some attackers don't hit in their prime, and Yamal did it while still growing physically, still learning the top level, and still playing almost every single week. That's where the problem started, because while his talent is clear, maybe even generational, you could see signs of fatigue creeping in toward the end of the season. The Inter Milan semi-final was a perfect example. Late in the game he was trying to make things happen, still demanding the ball, still going 1v1, but the explosiveness wasn't there. The sharpness on the turn, the acceleration to get past his man, it had dipped. Not because he isn't good enough, but because he had nothing left. And honestly, he shouldn't have had to carry that weight at 17. Hansi Flick saw that, and that's why this season is going to look very different for Yamal. First off, there's more depth now. Barcelona is working on bringing in Rooney Barca, who might not be as polished but can offer something fresh off the bench, something who can come during Copa del Rey or Supercopa games, someone who can rotate and let Yamal rest when needed. Because the truth is, you don't run a player like Yamal into the ground. You protect him, you manage him, you create a system around him, not to overuse him, but to maximize him. And that's the exciting part, because arrested Yamal is a completely different animal. He's fearless, he's sharp in tight spaces, his passing vision is already elite. He can dribble, shoot, create and dictate the pace of the game, and every match he plays, he seems to improve. There's no stagnation, no hesitation. You can tell this is someone who learns quickly and applies it even faster. But here's what's most dangerous about him this season. He won't need to do everything. With Nico on one side and Rafinha playing closer to goal, Yamal gets to operate with freedom. He doesn't have to track back as much. He doesn't have to constantly be the spark. He can pick his moments, and when he picks them, most defenders don't stand a chance. And what's even more underrated? Yamal isn't locked to the wing. He can float inside, drop into midfield, and even act as a creative 10 when needed. That versatility is key. It gives Flick options and gives Yamal different spaces to influence the game. He's 18, but the ceiling? It's way beyond anything we've seen at that age in years. And now that Barcelona has the depth to protect him, manage his minutes and let him be brilliant when it matters, we might see an even more dangerous version of Yamal this season. And speaking of danger, what truly separates this front three is how easily they can switch roles, rotate and destroy defenses from any angle. The most dangerous part of this Barcelona front three isn't just their talent. It's not just that Nico is electric, that Rafinha is reborn, or that Yamal looks like he's being created in a football lab. It's the fact that they can all play anywhere. This isn't a rigid front line where players are stuck in their zones. Hansi Flick has built something fluid, something unpredictable, and in modern football, that's how you win, by never giving defenders a fixed picture to prepare for. Let's start with Nico Williams. Yes, he'll likely start on the left, but he's just as comfortable switching flanks. He's played there for Athletic Club and Spain. What makes him special is that he doesn't rely on a specific side. He relies on rhythm, and when he finds that rhythm, he becomes almost unplayable. He cuts inside, whips balls across the box, or just drags defenders wide and opens the lane for someone like Rafinha to slip into. Then you have Yamal, who is probably the most flexible of the three. People think of him as a right winger, but honestly that label is limiting. He's naturally drawn to central areas. He drops deep to pick up the ball, pulls defenders with him and creates overloads in midfield. He can operate as a creative 10, even as a false winger, giving you both width and control. If Flick wants to dominate possession, he tucks Yamal inside. If he wants to counter-attack, he pushes him wide and lets him run. And finally, Rafinha. He's the wild card in all of this. He's shown he can function as a right winger, but last season he proved he's way more than that. He drifts between the lines, he finds pockets between midfield and defence, he plays off Lewandowski like a second striker, and he's even capable of leading the line if needed. He presses like a number 9, finishes like a winger, and creates like a 10. That kind of player gives Flick the freedom to change shape mid-game without making a single sub. And when you put all of this together, you get a trio that's constantly rotating, constantly moving, adjusting to what the game needs. That's a nightmare for defenders. Because who do you mark? When Nico suddenly switches to the right, Yamal tucks inside and Rafinha drifts left, your entire defensive setup gets tested. One mistake, one hesitation, and they're in behind. That's what makes this system so effective. It's simple in shape, but complex in execution. It's fast, fluid, and positionally intelligent. It keeps the opposition guessing, and in modern football, that's everything. And what's even scarier? This is all being built with depth in mind. Because the truth is, last season they failed because the starters were drained. But this time, Flick is making sure that won't happen again. But what do you think? Can they win the treble this year with this trio? Well, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and check out our latest video on Is this Hansi Flick's biggest weakness? Thank you.